This is another story from the Trobriands. Long ago, everyone on the island, all the villagers, were busily engaged in farming and fishing and living a reasonably good life, when terror came to the island. First, it came with a wild pig. The villagers began to find that their gardens were being ruined by this enormous pig that would come in the night and would dig up their crops and cause more destruction than normal. To begin with, they thought, well, it wasn't such a bad thing because they could kill the pig and have a feast. And they waited out at night. But their spears just bounced off its thick flesh, and it ran faster than they could run or their dogs could chase it. And it got braver and braver and started coming out in the day. And one day it came across a baby that was left hanging in its bag while the mother worked nearby. But it could reach. And it took the baby in the bag, and the mother, seeing this, ran after the pig. But the pig ran faster, and it ate the baby. And that baby was the most delicious, tasty thing it had ever eaten. And it got the taste, and it looked for more babies. And each time it ate, it got bigger, and then it moved on to children. And from children, it moved on to people, and it terrorized the island. And then it communicated, and its friend turned up. Its friend was an enormous black octopus. And the octopus, the tentacles were the length and width of coconut palm trees. And if people went out in their boats, a tentacle would come out and capsize it and grab them and eat it. And then they called another friend an enormous seagull. So even when they tried to go over to the reef at low tide, when it should be safe to gather shellfish, the seagull would swoop down and pluck them, and they were swimming in the water. In the islands, the number of people declined and declined. They felt, well, they could hardly go to their gardens or they'd be eaten. They couldn't really go out to sea to fish or they would be eaten. And the numbers of people declined and declined. And they couldn't hold their funerary feasts, and they couldn't observe their ceremonies, and they felt they couldn't live there anymore. And the last village became the final gathering of the few people who were left. And they decided that they would leave. That when the trade winds came, they would sail off. And they started making preparations. And the devil pig, seeing this, shouted out, for being a form of spirit, it could speak the human language. You're not gonna get away. If you get in those canoes, my friend the octopus will catch you. And if he doesn't eat you when you swim to shore, the seagull, my friend, will pluck you out of the waters. And if you escape and get on shore, why, I will eat you. None of you are going to leave here alive. Ha 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 ha! And that night he planned a show with his friend the octopus. And he went careering around the gardens and through the village where he normally stayed away because he didn't like the fire, but he knocked over some of the houses and roared and grunted. And meanwhile, the octopus lashed out one tentacle and then another, made enormous waves that came down onto the beach. And those villagers, terrified who looked out, could see the enormous octopus, its head above the water, with eyes bigger than can be imagined. Splash, splash, splash. And they were absolutely terrified. Well, they had one magician who felt that whilst his magic couldn't seem to work against the seagull or the pig, he thought he might be able to have some magic against the octopus. So they plotted to leave at night when the seagull wouldn't be able to get them. And he cast his spells, which may or may not have included a poisoned pig fed to the octopus. And they set out, one boat after the other. But there was a woman whose husband had just been eaten, and she tried to get into first one boat and then the other boat. But each boat said, try the next boat, until the last boat had left. All this time, the devil pig was watching and shouting and screaming and shouting, octopus, wake up and get your dinner. You're not going to escape. Of course, he couldn't go onto the beach because he was so big he sank into the sand, and the sand got between his trotters and rubbed them and made them sore. But the octopus, well, the octopus was deep below water with a terrible pain in his tummy, feeling very, very sorry for himself, and didn't hear his friend and didn't realize the boats were leaving. So they all got away, and the woman crept up the beach and went underneath an enormous giant clamshell that the village had pulled out once and slept. And that night, she gave birth to a baby boy. The next morning, she peeped out from under her shell, but she didn't want to get out of there in case the devil pig found her. And then she saw a chicken and she said, chicken, do you know where the devil pig is? The devil pig is far away sleeping, said the chicken. So she sneaked into the village and she got her mat and got supplies. And she lived under the shell, very quietly and timidly. And with the help of the chicken, she would sneak out during the day into the gardens to get any food she could, or maybe she'd collect some shellfish at low tide along the beach. And the child grew and grew. And when he was about 4 years old or so and had started talking, there was a night when she was absolutely terrified because she could hear the devil pig, who could smell that there might be someone around, stomping through the village. And he said, let me go and fight it. I'll fight it. So she called him Fear Not. And as he grew bigger, he grew stronger and stronger and stronger, and more determined to rid the island of the terrible devil pig and the black octopus and the great sea eagle. Well, his mother kept saying, no, you can't. And he got stronger and he practiced with his spear and he practiced with his spear. And finally, she said, okay. And he made 2 enormous spears. One he called a spear for the eye, and the other he called a spear for the heart. And then he went to a ridge. Up in the hills, and he cleared a spot, and he prepared a lot of spears and left them there. Then going down the side of the cliff, and the next cliff, he left many more bundles of spears. And then he went to the top when all was ready, and he left his mother at the beach, terrified. And he called out, where are you, you great ugly pig? Where are you? Come and fight. And the pig heard him calling and came trotting over in a hungry fashion. He found it hard to know how to insult a pig. So he shouted out, look at you, you ugly pig. Your mother was a pig, your father was a pig. And the pig snorted and said, I ate your mother, I ate your father. You didn't eat my mother. Ooh, I'll eat her, Sue. You're an ugly pig, come and fight. I'm not going to fight, I'm just going to come and eat you. And he came up and fear not threw spear after spear at him. And unlike the spears that had been thrown by the villagers, they pricked the skin and annoyed the great devil pig. But as the devil pig got just about to him with its great mouth open, preparing to devour him, he jumped off the edge of the cliff where he knew because of his arms he could go down quicker than the devil pig. Well, and then he danced and slapped his ass and jeered at the pig who followed him down. And when it more or less caught up, he threw more and more and more spears. And then the pig got to him. And he jumped up a tree and jeered and threw spears down. And the pig pushed, angled until it knocked the tree down. But then he jumped down and went down again. And the pig came down and he threw spears. And so the day went on. And they got tired. And the pig got more and more. It became almost like what we would call a hedgehog. Finally, when they were both pretty exhausted, and the pig got close to him, he got the great spear, the spear for the eye, and it went into this pig's eye. And the pig roared with anger and staggered. And this gave him his opportunity. He got close and the spear for the heart went in and killed the pig. But it almost killed Fear Not, who keeled over and collapsed and fainted. His mother, back home in the clamshell, terrified. Well, when he didn't come back that night, she knew he'd been eaten, like so many others, by the devil pig, and she cried. She cried all night. The next morning, her friend the chicken came and said, come quickly. Come, Fear Not needs your help. So she went up and she found him, more dead than alive next to the corpse of the devil pig. Well, she nursed him and she fed him with the flesh of the devil pig, and he grew back to strength. And when he was strong enough, they cut a bit of meat, they took the tail, and they took 3 rib bones, and they went back. And he ate and ate, and it's almost as though he took on the strength of the devil pig. And then he said it was time to tackle the octopus. And she said, no, you can't tackle it, but I will. And taking a stone axe that he carefully sharpened, he went out in his canoe and called for the octopus. Where are you, you great ugly black octopus? Well, the octopus was a bit shy of man now. Its last experience really hadn't been that pleasant. But it poked out and he saw its great tentacle. And then the bottom of his stomach disappeared and he was terrified. But he cracked his knuckles and knew he had to do what he had to do. Come out and fight, he said, slapping his bare ass and jeering. And the great black octopus got a bit closer. He said, your mother was a sea snake and you had two fathers, a spider and a crab. Well, the octopus wasn't going to take this sort of insult standing and sent up a great tentacle to grab the boat. And as the tentacle took hold of the boat, he went at it with his axe and he cut off the tentacle. Well, the octopus had 8 more tentacles and they came one after the other, but each time as they came, he cut them off. And then the octopus got madder and madder and he maneuvered the canoe slowly into shallower water, each time cutting more tentacles, cutting them down closer and closer. Of course, the tentacles will regrow, so the octopus wasn't too worried. And then it was just overcome with anger until he'd lured it into shallow water, so most of its head or body was in the air and it had no tentacles left. And then he took his great spear for the eye and he put it into the octopus's eye. And of course, well, there's a problem because octopuses have more than one heart, so the spear for the heart had to go in again and again until the octopus died. Then, taking as much of the tentacles as he could back to the beach to eat and get the strength of the octopus, he prepared to fight the great eagle. The great sea eagle was no longer resident on the island, but would pop in every now and again to see its friends, sometimes bringing with it a human who it would catch to give them as a little treat. So he prepared. He made a hole in the bottom of his boat and papered over it with bark. And when he saw the eagle coming, he set out in his boat. And the eagle, seeing him, came to have a look. Come and fight me, you great ugly eagle, he said, slapping his arse and jeering. Come and fight me. Your mother was a tree snake and your father was a bat. Well, the eagle wasn't going to stand for this sort of insult. And I said, I'm not going to fight you, I'm going to eat you. Then the eagle soared up into the sky until it was but a dot, and it began its descent. And when it got closer, he flipped and capsized the boat and made the hole, pulled out the bark from the hole and looked up, and the eagle seemed to say, I can still get you. And its talons went through the hole. But as they went through the hole, he looped them with a rope and tied them. And then the eagle was sort of caught, flapping, terrified, and coming out. Well, the captive eagle, he managed to spear it, a spear through the eye and a spear through the heart, cutting off a wing he went back to shore. And then they made a little boat. And the boat, well, for a mast, the boat had the 3 pigs' ribs lashed together. And for a sail, the boat had the eagle's wing. And at the front of the boat, it had the octopus's tentacles, and at the rear, the pig's tail. And then they set the little boat out so that it would sail off where the rest of the village had gone. And, well, a couple of months later, the village has reappeared, for they knew it would be safe, and they all lived happily ever after. Now, night-night, everybody. Sleep well. Sweet dreams.